Hello everybody and welcome to Mr. Saucedo's YouTube videos. Today we're going to be talking about non-disjunction human disorders. And so these are ones that you can't draw Punnett squares for. So that's kind of why we're separating them out like this. So keep in mind that some genetic disorders are actually just caused by having too many or too few chromosomes, right? So these are not caused by like autosomal dominant or autosomal recessive things. Instead, they're caused by just having too many or too few chromosomes. So having too many is called aneuploidy. Having too few is called monoploidy. Like, you don't need to know those terms, but I wanted to at least give them to you just in case you see them. So most of these genetic disorders are caused by something called non-disjunction. So please remind me again, all the way back in Unit 5, we talked about what spindle fibers do. What do spindle fibers actually do? So in case you forgot, in mitosis, right, spindle fibers attach to the centromeres and then are kind of separating sister chromatids apart and making sure that they're dragged to the opposite side of the cell so that when the cell divides, we have the right number of stuff and chromosomes on both sides. That is still true in sperm and egg cells. So notice we have our little spindle fibers. This one is not doing its job correctly, so it's actually giving too many chromosomes to this cell here. And so when they divide out, 2 of them are going to have too many chromosomes. 2 of these cells are going to have too few because they're missing entire copy. Same thing here. Like, again, we have a problem where like the spindle fiber isn't doing its job properly. So this one has too many, this one has too few, and these two have the right amount. So non-disjunction is just an error where the spindle fibers are not attaching to the centromeres correctly, so they're not separating your chromosomes the right way. Now, this is way more common in older individuals, egg and sperm cells. So the older you get, the more likely your sperm and egg cells are kind of like making these mistakes when they're going through meiosis. So mitosis is what we talked about in first semester. This is meiosis technically, and we'll talk about it at the very end of this unit. So what are the extra chromosome and disorders? Aneuploidy. So Down syndrome is probably the most like well-known, and it's having an extra chromosome 21. Edwards syndrome is having an extra chromosome 18. Patau syndrome is having an extra chromosome 13. So these 3 disorders are the disorders where your autosomes have too many, right? You have an extra 21, you have an extra 18, you have an extra 13. So these are your autosomes. The rest of the ones we're going to talk about are sex chromosome disorders. So Klinefelter syndrome is where you have 2 X chromosomes and a Y chromosome. Triple X syndrome is where you have 3 X chromosomes. Turner syndrome is the only one where you have too few. It's a single X chromosome. So instead of just saying X by itself, they put a 0, just so you know, like, okay, it's missing something. And the last one we're going to talk about is Jacobs syndrome. That's XYY. So every single one of these disorders has its own set of symptoms, its own set of like how likely is it for you to have a child born with these. But remember, none of these involve Punnett squares because these are just mistakes in meiosis with your spindle fibers not attaching to the centromeres in your chromosomes correctly. So, this is just something that happens in sperm and egg cells. Okay, so how do we identify these, right? Well, we use something called a karyotype. So a karyotype is when a geneticist or a doctor takes your DNA and separates out the chromosomes and counts them. So like this is chromosome 1, this is chromosome 2, and they take a picture of it. And so when you do that, you can see where the extra chromosomes are located, right? So find the extra chromosome and let's see if we can figure out what the disorder is. Okay, 13, that is Patau syndrome. All right, what about this one? It says a chromosome is missing. Well, there's only 1 then. We have an X chromosome here at the end, but only 1. So that would be Turner syndrome. All right. See if you can find this mistake here. Extra chromosome. XYY, that is Jacobs syndrome. What about this one? Okay, chromosome 21, Down syndrome. Last one. Okay, we have 3 X's. That is triple X syndrome. All right, well, that is it for this lesson. If you have any questions, please let me know, but make sure you fill in your notes as you go through this unit.